Thanks for staying with us. There are calls for a full-scale parliamentary probe into allegations leveled by former Environment Minister Professor Frimpong Boateng against some government officials and persons close to the presidency. Professor Frimpong Boateng maintains these individuals, some of whom he names in his report to the Chief of Staff, are responsible for government's failure to win the fight against illegal mining. Some of these individuals include President Akufo-Addo's own cousin, Gabby Otchere Darko, and he's denying the allegations. Mr. Otchere Darko is accused of contacting the minister just when the Interministerial Committee was set to dislodge a company identified as destroying a forest through mining activities. Mr. Gabby Otchere Darko, however, says that he was only asking questions on behalf of his clients as their lawyer. Well, there's a need for us to get this new statement coming through from Professor Frimpong Boateng. Joining us now is my colleague, Joseph Akable, who has details of what it is that, of course, the minister has been raising. Joseph, just before we listen into that, I want us to briefly hear Gabby Otchere Darko respond to the claims earlier made by the professor.
On a matter that's purely about a lawyer asking questions about his client. My lawyer comes to me and says that his client, with all these permits and licenses, goes on site with equipment to do prospecting, and the soldiers have come to seize the equipment. Now, what do you do as a lawyer? So I call the minister for clarification. I have a client who has all the documents or permits and licenses required to do prospecting, everything. And he goes on site, and then soldiers come to basically stop, not just stop them from working, but seize all the equipment. So I asked the minister, but they have permits, so what really, I want to understand the issue. And then the minister fires back and says, they are not prospecting, they are mining. Are you challenging the permit as fake? I said, no, but it should not be issued. I said, yeah, but that's a different matter. But I just want to understand really what the issues are. Is it that, so essentially, he gave me his side of the story, which is that he believes that what they were doing was mining, not prospecting, even though they had just gone on site. And that was the conversation that we had.
Well, Professor Boateng is back in the news, responding to the claims by Gabby Otchere Darko. Let's get more from Joseph Akable, our Cox correspondent, who's joining us. Joseph, what does he have to say, for instance, about what Gabby says, that he's only a lawyer seeking information on behalf of his clients?
In fact, he makes the point that that particular claim is laughable. That part of the statement he released, he reads, "It is laughable you claim to have called me to seek information on your client. If you needed any information, you could have called the Minerals Commission. You know I did not operate the Mining Information Service." He goes on to now detail what he says is the history of the company that is at the center of this particular controversy. He starts by saying that on 29th November 2016, there was a letter that was written by Mr. Tony Obin, then Chief Executive Officer of the Minerals Commission. During the NDC administration, he wrote to the company CNG Alaska that the company was, quote, seriously engaged in illegal mining on its prospecting license. He goes on to say that on 30th January 2017, the company was written to again, being warned of the activities that it was engaged in. Then he makes reference to 2nd October 2017, where this time around, John Peter Mewu, the then minister responsible for that particular sector, wrote to the company regarding its concession at Duabo and directed that in view of the fact that it does not have a valid mining operating permit and that the company and ministry has not yet ratified the lease, they are directed not to carry out any mining operations. And so he goes on to say that it was in these forest reserves that the IMCIM task force attempted to stop the illegal operations of the company and the subsequent company that took over, the Imperial Company Limited.
Interesting points there, I see. Now we know that Professor Boateng is also pointing to some media reports regarding this very company, which had Gabby Otchere Darko claiming that he's a lawyer or counsel for the company. What more do we know?
Yes, he actually alleges that through the Gabby's intervention, some Chinese nationals arrested at a site operated by the company were released. He also says soldiers who were providing security for the company attacked journalists covering the activities of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. And this, he points out, was captured by Joy News. And we know that Erastus Asaridonko, our colleague at Love FM in Kumasi, brought us those stories. In one of those instances, our vehicle, the side mirror, and the windscreen were cracked, and that particular report is what Professor Frimpong points to.
Well, I see. Well, there's a lot of reaction that's been greeting this. Joe, just hold on for us briefly. Let's bring in the former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Alhaji Nusef Hussein, who is joining us via Zoom now. Thank you, sir, for your time. If you're with us, how are you, of course, assessing what's happening now? A former government appointee, well, he's still a government appointee heading a different capacity now as a vaccine institute. But now we know that he's not satisfied about how government is fighting or going about the issues tackling illegal mining. From your own perspective, what should the government be doing about the claims?
Well, thank you so very much for having me. I think that there were already telltale signs of the difficulties and challenges that greeted the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Small-Scale Mining when it became apparent that some persons associated with government were involved in illegal small-scale mining. I mean, you recall that the excavators of the National Women's Organizer were bent. You recall that the Akunta mining was accused of mining in forest reserves. You recall that Sir John was accused of having concessions or mining in forest reserves, and many others. I mean, many others. Some ministers of state names also came out. Persons working in the Jubilee House. So we have always known that the Frimpong Boateng committee and the subsequent committee that was set up under Samuel Abujinapo will face challenges. And what Frimpong Boateng has captured in the report somehow confirms our long-held suspicion that the fight against illegal small-scale mining was not succeeding, largely because some powerful persons were involved in protecting those who were engaged in that illegal activity.
But if you make those points, the president, for instance, comes back to say that the concerns he was raising in this report lacks evidence. No single piece of evidence adduced to support his claims.
What evidence does the president need? What evidence? I mean, the president's the response issued by the presidency is at best laughable. It's ludicrous. That you would say that the man has not provided a transmittal letter and has not provided evidence. But there's evidence that the land in the gold mining areas is being degraded with careless abandon. That's not evidence. So who are the people behind the degradation? Who are those behind the degradation? That we are not arresting, we are not prosecuting people. Short of calling the A&G Alaska criminals, the response of Frimpong Boateng says it all. In fact, what has happened in those areas is termed universally as environmental crime. It's a despoliation of the environment. We are compromising the ability of the future generation to continue to depend on the land. And this is totally unacceptable. I mean, if a president says, I have put my presidency on the line, and you receive a report of the nature that Frimpong Boateng produced, the least you could do was cause an investigation to be conducted into the allegations.
Yeah, but I guess that's where the president comes in to say, well, if you want me to investigate this, provide the documents, support it with strict proof for me to act on.
What are you talking about? That we have a lazy president? Is that what you are suggesting? That we elected a president who is so lazy that when you give an indication of wanton destruction of the forest by illegal activities and suggest names that are behind it, the president cannot call state institutions to investigate your claim, but asks you to provide evidence. Is that what you're suggesting? Is that all that the presidency is about?
Okay, you tell me, exactly what are you expecting from the president, for instance, if you were the president at this moment?
I expected the president to appreciate the seriousness of the allegations raised by Frimpong Boateng in his report. I expected the president to act on the report expeditiously and with alacrity. I respected the president to appreciate the weight of the statement that he's put his presidency on the line and act of any shred of evidence that his people or some people connected with his government are the perpetrators of this heinous offense. And not to ask Frimpong Boateng to add a transmittal letter to the report or to provide further and better particulars of the accusations.
Okay.
If a president has come into office saying that we should bet on him, we should take a chance on him, the president must demonstrate beyond any reasonable shade of doubt that his invitation to us to take a chance on him was intended to be taken seriously if a chance was taken on him. And not the president, after we haven't given him an opportunity to rule this country, now tells us that we have to provide further and better particulars of allegations made against officers associated with his government before he can act. That is not what the president is about.
You've been at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry before. This is not new to you. Galamsey is a big fight, you agree?
Well, I know Galamsey is a very big fight. And I told Samuel Abujinapo, my brother, that if he was going to succeed in this fight, he needed the total and unalloyed support of the president. Because people will frustrate him. I'm not surprised that Frimpong Boateng has been frustrated. I know exactly what goes into Galamsey. You must have the total and unalloyed support of your boss to be able to prosecute the fight. Is it not a breach of trust that certain officers of state who are paid with state resources are culpable in the heinous degradation of the environment?
Yeah, but Alhaji, we need to be safe here. You're speaking as though you, in its entirety, believe the report coming through from Professor Frimpong Boateng.
I believe in its entirety. I have no reason to doubt the report. Doesn't it come to you as a surprise that within the 2 years that the MPP government under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo placed a total ban on small-scale mining? This was the period that Ghana exported the largest amount of gold from the small-scale mining sector. How did that come about?
So going forward, what's your, recommendation in terms of how we can tackle this? Some are calling for just hold on for me briefly. Some are calling for a bipartisan probe into this from the parliamentary level. Some are also asking the Ghana Police Service to act immediately. There are those who believe that the president still has an opportunity to act on this and to, for instance, invite Professor Frimpong Boateng and some of the government officials named in his report. What's the appropriate posture or measure for you?
First of all, I think that the president must demonstrate to all of us that he means exactly what he says when he said that he was putting his presidency on the line. He has to act on the report. After all, Frimpong Boateng, Professor Frimpong Boateng was not a busybody. He was asked to produce the report by the chief of staff.
Right.
And so Frimpong Boateng himself, the government owes Frimpong Boateng a duty to implement the report. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we have a report. It gives an indication that the fight is not succeeding largely because of the kind of people who are involved in the illegal activity, the least the president can do is to cause an investigation into the allegations raised. That's the least he can do.
Okay, that's your expectation of the president. How about the parliamentary probe? Will that succeed? Will that be helpful?
Well, that will be helpful. That will be helpful. I think that it will be helpful to the extent that if people have confidence that the parliamentary probe will produce results, I tell you without any fear of doubt that the people in the mining communities know those behind the illegal mining activities. They do. But you see, the impunity with which these people are going about their activities has somehow made the people lethargic. They think that even if they report, nothing will happen. And that is why people are not speaking up. But let me assure you that the people of this country, especially those in the mining communities, know exactly the nature and type of people who are despoiling the environment.
Alhaji, respond to this statement from me. We have lost the fight against illegal mining. You agree?
Oh, we have. We have. The destruction is catastrophic. The report shows that the attempt to fight illegal small-scale mining has failed completely and spectacularly. That it has failed because those who have been entrusted with the responsibility of stopping the illegal activities are those complicit in the perpetuation of that illegal activity. And that's why we have failed.
What do we...
How come?
Yeah.
How come that there is a legal regime in the Minerals and Mining Act that spells out precisely and concisely how equipment seized from the illegal mining sites should be dealt with? How come that more than 500 excavators just got missing, vanished into thin air without due regard to the laws of this country?
Well, we're still looking for the excavators. Probably if you have any help or to track them, that will be helpful. That's just on a lighter side. But back to the key issues that confronts us. The laws, the legal regime, and how to reform them and make them better so we're able to tackle this problem. I'm not sure this is just a Nana Akufo-Addo problem, you agree? This goes beyond the presidency, and we need a collective fight against this. So how do we, start off by reforming our laws and getting the regime in place?
You are perfectly right. You are perfectly right when you say that the laws, the legal regime, the regulations are continuously evolving. When I became Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, the penalty for engaging in illegal small-scale mining was not deterrent enough. It was just a fine. So when we went onto the field to stop the illegal small-scale mining, we realized that illegal small-scale miners could pay the fine with ease. So we returned to the office and sponsored an amendment to the Minerals and Mining Act that made the penalty stiffer. We realized that even though small-scale mining was the exclusive preserve of Ghanaians, a large number of foreigners had invaded the small-scale mining sector. We went back to the drawing boards and stiffened the penalty against foreigners who were engaged in small-scale mining. We realized that equipment seized from the small-scale mining sites illegal small-scale mining sites could not be confiscated to the state. There was no provision that allowed for the confiscation of those equipment that were used in the small-scale mining sector. We came back to the office, sponsored an amendment to make it possible to confiscate those equipment from illegal small-scale miners. So it's a continuous activity. But my brother, if you don't implement the law, how do you appreciate the lacuna in the law?
And Alhaji, I would appreciate it if you could just look into the camera for us and speak directly to the political class. The concern about the political class is key because the belief is we're not tackling illegal mining simply because your colleagues, those who are in political office, those who have political influence, are able to bend the rules. What message do you have for them?
First of all, politics is about trust. And so those in the political class must know that a huge privilege has been done them by giving them an opportunity to serve the country. To serve the country, my words underlined. It's a public office. So those in that offices or in those offices are public servants. They are servants. And so nobody turns a person into office because he wants that person to enrich himself, but to provide public service. By persons in the political class is simply greed, avarice, and smacks of a breach of trust. If the people give you a mandate and you use the mandate for your personal benefit, it destroys the trust and lessens the effectiveness of our laws and regulations, because people will then act with impunity, because they are emboldened to act with impunity, because we, those who have been entrusted with the performance of duties in the public office, are abusing our office. That is why when I was made Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, I was left in no doubt that I didn't have to get myself involved in any illegal activity in at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, whether it was illegal logging, illegal mining, or whatever, or even grabbing of state land. I was so convinced that the only way to solve the problem was to extricate yourself and not be a beneficiary of those things. And that was why I never got myself involved in them. If your mother is declared a witch, you have to exorcise your mother before you can have the authority to deal with other people's mothers. And this goes to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. If your officers are said to be complicit in the illegal activities in the small-scale mining sector, you have to deal with your officers in order to have the necessary authority, moral authority, to deal with officers who are not associated with your party. And it's very important.
Very key points you're raising there. Of course, I thought that would have been the last one, but there's this issue coming up about the legal status of this report being issued by Professor Frimpong Boateng. You are a lawyer as well. What influence, what authority, or perhaps what grounds can this report constitute for any future government that may be interested in pursuing the matter to take up and to use this document? Is this document useful or otherwise?
That is a very important document. First of all, the document gives us an indication of the nature of the problem and those involved in the perpetuation of the problem. Two, The document also details and catalogs the extent of degradation in the mining sites and the people involved in the commission of those crimes. I say crimes because my reading of the document and my appreciation of our responsibility to protect the environment leaves me in no doubt that what Professor Frimpong Boateng has catalogued would constitute environmental crime. Now, so any government, including the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo government, should be interested in going to the roots of the problem.
Are you suggesting that these individuals mentioned in the document could be prosecuted on the basis of this document by any future government? Is that what you're suggesting?
I have no doubt that they can and should be prosecuted. I have said that if it were the revolutionary era, I'm sure these people would have been tried by now and probably be put before the firing squad.
Yeah, but this is a document from an individual. What's the relevance?
But this is a document from an individual who occupied a dual office as the Minister for Environment and as the chairman of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Small-Scale Mining. He must be talking from his experience in the discharge of his responsibilities as the chairman of the Illegal Small-Scale Mining Committee. You can't treat such a report lightly, can you?
Well, some would say, and as the president is pointing out, he was just fuming over his personal frustration.
Well, I, as a lawyer, will say yes. The president says we received the documents. We received the documents because they have not said that they haven't received the document. They have sought to rely on what, in their view, are technicalities, and they are not technicalities. Unless they simply want to tell us that Professor Frimpong Boateng walked up to the office of the Chief of Staff and left the office, the document on the table of the Chief of Staff without the Chief of Staff's knowledge. Obviously, what I know about official procedure is that these documents would have been received in the mail and sent to the office of the Chief of Staff. But the president doesn't deny the contents. So I presume that the presidency and the president have read the documents, but they refuse to act on the documents. They appreciate the enormity.
Unfortunately, P.S. we've lost, of course, Alhaji Yunusa Hussaini, who's the former. Yes, Alhaji, if you're still with us, we lost you briefly. You're saying that the president admitted receipt of the document and then...
appreciated the enormity of the document.
Right.
Or the matters contained in the document, but decided to shelve the matter in the hope that it will never come to light. 2 years after the document was submitted to the presidency, we now know what was contained in the document. We now know.
So you're saying prosecution is the way to go, and that the next government, NDC government, as you were assuring, you were putting out that earlier.
I can assure you that in the next NDC government, these matters raised by Frimpong Boateng will be investigated and, if necessary, prosecuted.
Okay, let's wrap up. The status of the Interministerial Committee, we're not too sure if it's still active, but should the president reconsider his decision on that committee, or perhaps look at another approach to dealing or solving the problem?
That will be the third attempt, not so. The first attempt was when the committee was constituted under Professor Frimpong Boateng, which included 10 ministers. That committee failed spectacularly. And the document produced by Professor Frimpong Boateng bears eloquent testimony to the catastrophic failure. Then a new minister for lands and natural resources was appointed in the person of Honorable Samuel Abdullahi Jinopo. He sought to revive the fight against illegal small-scale mining and constituted or called for a national conference, and now was associated with the national conference. That too has failed. Now, if the president is minded within the last 2 years to
Alaji, hello, Alaji. Okay, we've lost him, but point well made there on the issues relating to illegal mining. Well, some aspects of the media reports that Professor Frimpong Boateng has been referring to was captured by a Joy News documentary produced by Erastus Otchere Darko, highlighting some of the incidents and the claims that the former chair of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining has been referring to. Here are excerpts for you, and we'll be back.
We drive through roads made by these illegal miners in a once virgin restricted forest. They link one mining site to another deep in the reserve.
This is the Apamprama Forest Reserve, under the watch of the Forestry Commission. Now come with me as I take you through the devastation caused by illegal mining, even within a mining ban.
Many rare tree species nurtured for years have been felled with reckless abandon. At best, the miners process some into planks to construct makeshift sheds. The rest of the logs are buried deep under heaps of earth created around large uncovered pits. The destruction to these virgin forests is huge, over 15 different locations, each about the size of 10 football fields combined.
Several hectares of land destroyed in this manner, deep within the forest reserve. Now, many questions arise at the moment, and some of those questions are, so this devastation went on, and the Apraman Forest Reserve sites are right here. The Forestry Commission says it had no evil, it did not see anybody bringing in heavy equipment. This has lasted for close to a year. No government official got wind of it, or nobody was prepared to even face them.
At one such site in the Cobra Forest, head of security for mining firm Heritage Imperial Mining Company, ex-WO Boateng, told the task force it has the blessing of people he describes as high-powered to carry out operation in the area.
We are here. There's a document. No problem. A minor. Do you understand? I'm not a minor.
In the last 5 days, a bold and relentless enforcement of the ban on small-scale mining has led to arrest of 20 Chinese nationals, 4 of them in the Diaso Forest Reserve at the weekend. 10 of the excavators have been sent to Accra and many mining settlements destroyed by the task force. Task Force Commander W1 Isaac Nyako is overwhelmed by the wanton destruction of forest.
Indeed, this is the largest. In fact, I don't even know how to start and how to end. I'm even shocked seeing the ground like this. The largest so far at this very site.
Leader of the Interministerial Task Force, Nana Jekum, says the fight will continue. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Otchere Darko, Kumasi.
And pressure is continuing to mount on government to form a bipartisan committee that will probe this matter. Political activist and a member of the governing New Patriotic Party, Dr. Arthur Kennedy, wants a full-scale parliamentary probe into the matter.
It's a damning, substantive, fact-filled report, and the idea that it sat on the president's desk for 2 years is unimaginable and unfathomable.
Some have said that it was presented to the chief of staff and that the president may not have seen it. Some have even gone as far as suggesting that if Professor Frimpong Boateng wanted this to gather the sort of steam he is putting out now, then he should have addressed it at the cabinet level. How do you respond to such concerns or comments?
Well, I mean, those saying that are not serious. To begin with, all around the world, everybody knows that when you hand a report to the chief of staff, it is as good as handing it to the president, unless the president wants to say he has no confidence in his chief of staff. As for presenting it at the cabinet level, at that time he had left the cabinet, so he couldn't have presented it to the cabinet. Furthermore, the report itself contains clear, unambiguous instances of him bringing up to the president the problems that the Interministerial Committee task force was having, particularly, for example, with regard to the senior minister, with regard to Sir John, with regard to a lot of others, and the president promising to address those. He didn't. So the idea that if he wanted to be serious, he would have presented it at the cabinet level, it's really a non-starter, and no serious person will say that. I think that not only that, I actually am happy that we're doing this on Joy News, because you and your reporter, Erastus Otchere Darko, did some very brave reporting in which you highlighted a lot of the problems in Galamsey. There were instances where two groups of military people almost came to blows, with one group with the Interministerial Committee, another group protecting the Galamseyers. And this was aired and everybody saw it. So the idea that this report has been on the blind side of the president is really a joke and an insult both to the president's intelligence and integrity as well as to Ghanaians.
Both to the president's intelligence and integrity. Why do you say that?
I mean, it is obvious that those making the argument are not serving him well. You know, when you say that a president chief of staff has had a report for 2 years, but he didn't know about it, I mean, that's really not on. And secondly, I'm also saying that the reporting by Joy FM and other news outlets should have come to the attention of the president. So the idea that he didn't know about it is really something that serious people should not claim.
Well, that's not the end of it. Professor of Law, Gabby Otchere, shares his view on why he believes there must be a probe into the matter.
For me, I think the matter was swept under the carpet, because if you look at the reports, it is not just an ordinary report. It's not just an informal discussion as it is being alleged. Of course, we don't have all the complement of facts to come to a definite conclusion. But if you put the pieces together, the evidence can be corroborated to come to the conclusion that this is not just a personal rantings by the former minister about an issue that he confronted while doing his work as a minister and as part of the chair of that committee that was set up. So it is unfortunate that that is the spin that the government is putting on it. But it is obvious for well-meaning people to discern and to see that this is a deliberate attempt to sweep something under the carpet and to come up with some justification which does not seem to fly.
to come up with some justification that does not seem to fly. But what do you feel could have led to this situation? Why do you think, you say it was swept under the carpet, but why do you think that was?
Well, for a number of reasons. I think one is the obvious fact that who is running the show, the governance system that we have, who is running it, it's not just the government that has been brought to power. And so in this situation, you have some forces that work behind or are working behind the government. And it's not only peculiar to Ghana. It's as a result of the kind of democratic system that has been imposed on us. And so we have a system where people support campaigning and people need to be paid back for what they have put into the campaign exercise. And so for that matter, it's difficult for government to, expose such people. And for that matter, it creates a situation where some issues are swept under the carpet just to protect people who are in high places and who are involved in such practices. I think that is the bottom line.
And we'll keep watching the space and bring you some updates as and when we have them. You're watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. When we get back, Ghana is becoming a destination for luxury cars. However, they may have been stolen from some European countries. I bet you didn't know about this. We'll talk about it. Plus, get some reactions on that for you right here on The Pulse. Please stay.